My name is Brian Kuhn, Mayor of Lancaster, Ohio. We are a city that takes great pride in our history, and we have a strong spirit as we invest in our present and build for our future. There are many dedicated people who make the city operate on a daily basis throughout the year. Join me now as we meet these people who help make the city what it is today. Hi, my name is Brian Kuhn. I'm the Mayor of the City of Lancaster, and welcome to our program. Today we have with us Chief Dave Ward of the Lancaster Fire Department. Chief, welcome to our show. I appreciate you coming. And if you don't mind, let's start off by telling the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. First, I'd like to thank you, Mayor Kuhn, for inviting me onto your show, your inaugural show. I've been with Lancaster Fire now going on almost 27 years. I worked my way from firefighter to firefighter, paramedic, lieutenant, captain, assistant chief, and I've been the chief now for a little over 4 years. So it's been very fruitful, very rewarding opportunity for me.
So you've been with the department 27 years. I imagine over that time you've seen a lot of changes, not only in equipment but techniques. What about the equipment that you have? I assume you're in charge of millions of dollars worth of equipment.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. When we first started in the fire service, universal precautions was something that you sort of did. It wasn't really mandatory, especially masks and things like that. And it was after the AIDS really got started, but it really wasn't pushed as far as universal precautions with the fire service. A lot of guys wouldn't like to start IVs with gloves, so we've seen a lot of changes in the fire service. I've been told prior to when the 80s, guys would be like a badge of honor to be going into a fire without their masks and coming out, and you'd be, you know, a lot of mucus, and some guys would throw up, and it was. That doesn't happen anymore. We really try to take care of ourselves. We wear our masks, our universal precautions. It's just a completely different animal than it was even 10 or 15 years ago. As far as equipment, we really have been blessed with great equipment. We were able to secure a grant. We've got a lot of grants. The federal government in 2001 started the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, which is federal dollars going to local departments for equipment. So we were able to write grants for our SCBAs, self-contained breathing apparatus, the air packs we wear in. We were also the Jaws of Life you've heard of.
Sure.
That was grant opportunities where every one of our medics now, and they're getting some age to them. It's probably been 10 years now that we've had those, but that was a grant opportunity. We have probably received, over that time period, almost $1 million in just equipment from the federal government.
From grants alone, so that's no cost to the city, right?
It's a 10% cost. It was 90-10. So yeah, a very minimal amount of money that cost to the general fund. So we've been very blessed that way. Our fire trucks, one of those fire trucks that we have now, we have 2 engines that are frontline service. One of those was a grant opportunity. We received in 2010 $270,000 from the feds to purchase a grant, or to purchase a fire engine. We had to come up with about $140,000. Okay. So they're a pricey piece of equipment, but those grant dollars have been fantastic.
And so current day, if you went out to buy a fire truck, are you looking at $500,000?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that right?
The last one we purchased was 2 years ago, was $453,000. So we can assume 4 or 5% a year increases. So you're looking at almost $500,000 just for a basic fire truck.
Well, you know, that's interesting, Chief. You know, our viewers out there today, you know, when you hear the fire squad, a truck or a medic go by, they probably really never think about the cost of what that is to put it on the road, and that's kind of staggering. $500,000 for a truck. And then you have the maintenance on top of that, right?
Absolutely. Normally the maintenance doesn't really kick in for about 8 to 10 years. Then you start to see bigger maintenance equipment issues. We just had ordered about a year ago a new medic. Council and the city administration is committed to an apparatus replacement schedule for our medics. We replace one about every 2 years. We have 4. We have 3 frontline. Okay. We have a medic that's stationed on the east side, one that's stationed behind St. Mary's, and then one that's stationed on the west side at 601 Harrison. Those are our frontline medics, and then we have one in reserve if one breaks down. The one in reserve is typically our oldest medic. Okay. And so soon, by the end of the month, we should take receipt of our newest medic, and then we will either sell or repurpose our backup medic, and then rotate things down.
You have a new backup thing.
Exactly.
And then, so Chief, the old medic that's the backup now that's going to be kind of retired from Lancaster Fire Department, is that something that another department like a township like Bern Township or Amanda, would somebody like that be interested in that, or where do those go typically, do you know?
Yes. About 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was, City Council approved the govdeals.com. Anything we sell has to go to a bid situation. And so the last one we sold went to govdeals.com, and it was purchased that way. And so it's disposed of. Sometimes we'll take the last one that we're getting rid of and use it or give it to parks. For example, we've given a backup medic to a our parks department, where they've used it for almost like a utility vehicle. So we try to give it to the city if they can use it. Otherwise, we sell it on the market.
And so the useful life of one of either a fire truck or a medic, it's quite a long time.
For a fire truck, the National Fire Protection Agency says first line before it goes into reserve. So frontline fire engine is good for about 15 years frontline service. And then you move it to a reserve status for 10 years. And then after 25 years, they recommend that you dispose of the truck.
But 25 years is a long time for a piece of equipment that, it costs the city a lot of money, but it certainly would seem that they would get their money's worth out of that over 25 years.
You do.
That's about a career for some people almost.
When I first came on was in 1989, and that's when the city last passed a police and fire levy. And with that levy came, it was a 0.45 tax, and with that came an opportunity to purchase some of our trucks. So what happened was, in 1990, 91, 93, or 94, we purchased 3 trucks. And it was great because we sorely needed those. The trucks we replaced were in the 60s. However, when you go out 25 years, then you have to replace them all at once again.
Right.
So we have 2 new trucks now. And what I anticipate going before you and council would be in about 2018 to 2020, asking to replace one of our reserve trucks with a new truck. That way, in so many years from now, we won't have 3 to replace. We'll only have to replace them so often. So it's not such a huge financial burden.
I like that idea, to stagger it and spread that cost over time.
Yes.
Because as a new mayor working on the budgets, as the service safety director, I realize our money's tight, and we need to spend it wisely. And I know Mayor Smith over his administration did a great job, and going forward, I hope so too. With chiefs and department managers, they really do anticipate future needs and watch the current spending. So, Chief, let me ask you. We're talking about fire trucks and medics, and the runs. What kind of run? What kind of run volume does Lancaster Fire Department do?
Overall, we do about a little over 9,000 runs. Of that 9,000, about 7,500 are EMS, and then the remaining would be fire runs. Let's say it's 1,700 or 1,800 fire runs. If you break that fire run category down, about 500 of those are EMS based as well. So the trend across the country, and it's been this way for a decade or more, maybe 20 years now, is that fires are actually kind of plateauing or going down. I think it's due to good code enforcement, and people are more diligent with what they do. But I think a lot of it is really the code enforcement and good fire prevention. EMS, on the other hand, has trended for our city about 3.1% annually increasing. So
how's that compare with the national average? Do you know?
I think it's pretty much the same.
Excuse me.
EMS is truly becoming the workhorse of the fire service. We still have to have fire service protection, but when you look at what we do daily, by far it's EMS based.
Well, that's great. And maybe it's like our aging population, or I'm not certain, but good information to know.
I think a lot of people now use the fire service as a frontline medical healthcare.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Maybe instead of going to the doctor or something, they will call a medic unit out and to evaluate them. And there's a neat thing going on right now in the fire service, and it's just in its infancy, is where it's called community paramedicine. And it really is a collaborative effort between hospitals across the country and fire services, where hospitals are paid by Medicare and I won't say the right word, but so if you're a patient and you are released from the hospital, and you're on Medicare, Medicare will pay X number of dollars to the hospital if you stay out of the hospital for the next 30 days. If you come back, then they discount what they pay the hospital. So a lot of hospitals and a lot of fire departments are beginning to look at this partnership where that, how can we take let's say a paramedic, a community paramedicine, and send them out, give them a caseload of, say, 10 patients, and say, paramedic ward, you're going to go out and you're going to check on Mayor Kuhn on these days, see what they are. It's really almost like a social service, if you will.
Sounds like a doctor making house calls.
In essence, but it's much more than that. I mean, a lot of times you might just be checking on their welfare. What do they need? Maybe you could hook them up with a HVAC person, or just whatever the elderly person might need, so that they are, one, taken care of, and number two, they're not going back to the hospital. So it's a win situation for the hospital, it's a win situation for Medicare, it's a win situation for the fire departments. The only question is with departments is, how is it funded? How do you take a person off of a truck and do that? So I think we are now where, if you remember the old 70s show, Johnny and Roy, Emergency One,
right,
when paramedicine was just coming into the fire service, I think that's where we are now with this community paramedicine. I think it's got some real value. I don't know if it's right for every city, every department, but I know in Central Ohio you have Violet Township's got a pilot program with Mount Carmel getting ready to kick off, along with Truro Township, which is Reynoldsburg, and then Whitehall. They've kind of had been the tip of the spear in Central Ohio as far as how's this going to work. I know there's a fire department in Butler County that's done this, and it had quite a bit of success with this. So I'm curious to see how this actually unfolds over the next 2 or 3 years. And I also think it's important to note that we bill EMS as well, and so Medicare is starting to set metrics, or other words, benchmarks on how the quality of care we're providing to our customers. So because they are the biggest payer to us when we bill a patient, and so they're going to ask us, oh, how do I know that you're meeting the proper metrics so that we can pay you the full amount? So, you know, there's a lot of things that are coming on the fire departments that they really have to be ahead of the curve and be proactive, and we're just beginning to look at this, and I think there's an opportunity for us to, you know, maybe look at where we want to be in the next 5 to 10 years.
Wow. And do you see our Lancaster Fire Department maybe teaming up with Fairfield Medical Center?
You know, I think it could be an opportunity. Again, there's a lot of things we have to look to the future for. One is staffing. How do we transition into that if we do transition into that? Right now, our staffing is at 70. That includes the assistant chief and myself. So we really have 68 firefighters that are on the streets every day. So it's going to take a lot of administrative work too. So I think one, how do we staff that? Another thing we want to look at going forward is our engine house placements, and just look at the whole dynamics of how we've operated. It's an interesting fact is that the average age of our engine houses is 76 years. Our oldest is 118 years, and then our next one was built in the 50s, so it's 60 or 70, 60 years old, 70 years old, 65, and then the newest one is about 50 years old. So when you average those together, it's 76 years. I think they're spaced well, but I think looking to the future, we have a big population that's in that Dominion home area. So I think it's time now to look at, okay, how do we position ourselves? Do we start looking at property, or do we want to maybe look at consolidating 2 engine houses and placing one somewhere and then building a new one? I think there's some opportunity that we really need to start looking at.
Well, Chief, I appreciate you coming on our show today, and we'll have you on again, and we'll go farther with that discussion, I think.
Sounds good.
So again, thanks for Chief Ward coming on our show today, and stay tuned, and we're going to have former Mayor Smith on our show. So Chief, thanks again for coming, and thanks for all you do for Lancaster Fire Department.
Thank you for having us, and I really thank the community for allowing us to serve them, so thank you very much.
Thanks.